I cut back on work to prove a point to my wife. It worked, just not in the way either of us expected. For almost 3 years, my wife kept telling me the same thing. You care more about your job than you do about this family. At first, I'd laugh it off. Then she'd say it again and again. Eventually, every argument somehow came back to my job. You missed dinner. You canceled date night. You're always checking emails. She wasn't wrong. I really was working all the time. The problem was, she never asked why. About a year earlier, the company I'd worked for lost several major clients. There were layoffs every month. Nobody knew whose turn was next. So I started saying yes to everything. Extra projects, late nights, weekend meetings. Not because I loved working, because I was terrified of losing the job that paid our mortgage. I never told her how scared I was. I thought I was protecting her. One Friday night, she looked at me and said, I'd rather have less money and more of my husband. That sentence stayed in my head all weekend. Monday morning, I walked into my manager's office. I turned down the overtime, stopped volunteering for extra work, started leaving at 5 every evening. When my phone rang after work, I didn't answer. For the first time in years, I was home for dinner every single night. At first, my wife loved it. We cooked together, watched movies, went on evening walks. She kept saying, this is all I ever wanted. Honestly, I was happier too. Then about 6 weeks later, my paycheck changed. No overtime, no bonuses, just my base salary. It wasn't enough to cover everything we'd gotten used to. The first thing to go was eating out every weekend. Then the vacations we'd been planning. Then we started talking about whether we needed to sell one of our cars. One evening, she was sitting at the kitchen table paying bills when she looked up and quietly asked, is this because you stopped working overtime? I nodded. She didn't say anything for a while. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at her and said, because every time I tried to explain how much pressure I was under, you thought I was choosing work over you. The truth is, I was choosing us. She started crying. Then she admitted something too. She said, I thought you were chasing promotions. I never realized you were carrying all that fear by yourself. That night, we talked longer than we had in months. Not about money, about us, about how we'd both been making assumptions instead of having honest conversations. A week later, we sat down together and built a new budget. She even picked up a few freelance projects she'd been thinking about for a while. Not because I asked her to, because she wanted us to carry the weight together. I eventually started working a little overtime again, not as much as before, and not without talking to her first. She stopped assuming every late night meant I cared less about our marriage. I stopped assuming she understood why I was working so hard. Looking back, neither of us was wrong. She missed her husband. I was trying to protect our future. We just forgot to let each other into the conversation. Sometimes the biggest problem in a relationship isn't a lack of love. It's two people silently carrying burdens the other person never knew existed.